it live.
Good evening. Welcome to the October 6th, 2020 Lone Tree City Council meeting. We did convene earlier and went into exec session, so I'm going to reopen our meeting now. We are going to wait till 7:05 to formally begin the meeting to allow time for people to join us virtually. While we're waiting, I can speak to you about how we are meeting virtually these days during COVID. So our city council meeting will be conducted as a virtual meeting held electronically in accordance with council adopted policy number 20-01. Members of the public must access this meeting via electronic participation. Public comment during our virtual meetings is a little different. Comments from the public are welcome at during our scheduled public hearing this evening or during our public comment section on the agenda. There are 3 ways to submit public comment during these virtual public city council meetings. Comments that were submitted in writing prior to the meeting will be forwarded to the city council and included in the official meeting minutes. If you would like to type a public comment during our public comment portion of the agenda or during our public hearing this evening, click on the Ask a Question in the sidebar of our virtual meeting and enter your name and address in the message window along with your public input. Your name and comments will be presented to the City Council and included in the official meeting minutes. If you would like to speak to Council live using your telephone during our public hearing this evening or during public comment, please type that in the Ask a Question box and submit your name, address, and phone number. You will receive a call back from city staff and you will be connected virtually, over the phone to this meeting to provide your comment. All comments should be directed to City Council, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Again, this is not a question and answer period. This is a time for you to provide feedback to the City Council. So with that, we're going to pause for just about 2 more minutes to allow virtual participation. So we will be right back at 7:05 to formally begin our meeting. Thanks so much. Again, thanks so much for joining us at the October 6th, 2020 regular meeting of the Lone Tree City Council. We have paused till 7:05 to allow for virtual participation in our meeting. We did convene earlier and we're in executive session, so I'm now officially reopening our meeting. I will ask everyone to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay, there are no amendments to our agenda this evening. It is adopted as published. Are there any conflicts of interest from council? And I will just say, if you have a conflict of interest, just shout it out right now. And if I don't hear any voices, we're going to move on. Okay, glad to hear no conflicts. We're moving on. Public comment. Again, I spoke at the beginning of the meeting about how public comment is entered during our virtual meetings. It is a little bit different, but any comments that were received ahead of time will be forwarded to council and are part of our official record. If you are interested in providing public comment now, please click the Ask a Question box on your screen, and you can either type your question in for council, and your comment will then be, please include your name and address, and your comment will be forwarded to council and included in our meeting minutes, in our official minutes. And then finally, if you would like to participate live via your phone, please type your name, phone number, and address in the Ask a Question box, and a staff person will reach out, call you, and connect you to us so we can hear your comments. So I'm going to give a quick pause to allow for folks to join or participate in public comment. And while you're doing that, I'm going to move ahead and just go over the announcements for Lone Tree for this evening. So again, more information can always, I'm pausing for public comment, folks. Please, if you are interested in communicating with us, go ahead to the Ask a Question box, but I'm just going to fill you in on some of our announcements while we're allowing you that time. So again, more information is always available at cityoflonetree.com and the LoneTreeArtsCenter.org. So we've got COVID community testing at the Lone Tree Arts Center every Monday from 9 to 3 p.m. Visit the city website for more information. Oktoberfest at the Arts Center is next Saturday, October 10th at 11 a.m. and then at 3 p.m. There were 2 sessions. We'll also be having Lone Tree Pumpkin Patch Sunday, October 11th from 9 a.m. to noon. These events are taking place at our Lone Tree Arts Center. We hope you can join us there. Arts in the Afternoon on the Rocks, Wednesday, October 7th at 1:30 p.m. is presented virtually. Again, go to this LoneTreeArtsCenter.org for more information about how to participate with that. And then finally, Motowns and Jerseys in Harmony, Friday, October 16th through Sunday, October 18th at the Lone Tree Arts Center main stage. That's a live performance and it usually sells out. So if you're interested, get your tickets for any and all of those. While I was reading those, I'm going to ask our city clerk if anyone has asked to participate live during our public comment section.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any requests for public comment.
Okay, we're going to move on then. Our consent agenda this evening includes minutes of the September 15th, 2020 City Council meeting, claims for September 8th, 2022, September 28th, 2020. It also includes Resolution 20-24, a resolution terminating the Regional Hazardous Materials Board of Arapahoe/Douglas counties. And then also Resolution 20-25, a resolution supporting and approving the City of Lone Tree's grant application to the Department of Local Affairs for the Peace Officers Mental Health Support Grant Program. I will look for a motion from City Council on our consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous approval of consent. Moving right on to our community development agenda this evening. We've got a public hearing on the city grant application to the Colorado Department of Local Affairs on behalf of Coble and Company for proposed Ridgegate Station affordable apartments. I am going to open our public hearing and I'm going to turn the presentation over to Kelly first from the Lone Tree City staff. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this public hearing is pertaining to a grant application associated with a proposed affordable housing community on the east side of I-25 that will be developed by Coble and Company. Coble had planned to apply to the state of Colorado for funding for part of the project through home funds. Unfortunately, because of COVID, there was some reallocation of those funds that are available for that purpose, and they had to be reallocated. So the state is now using Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG funds, for this purpose. However, only local governments are eligible to apply for that type of funding, which is why the City of Lone Tree is going to be, with your approval, applying to the state for this funding on behalf of Coble. As part of the application process, a public hearing is required by the state to let people know that the city is intending to make this application and to afford the opportunity for any public comment should there be any. So I just wanted to state that this hearing has been noticed and published in accordance with the state requirements. And then just wanted to say too that the details about the project itself, which we'll hear a little bit of tonight from Luke Cannon from Coble and Company, but the rest of the details on the development itself will come back before the Planning Commission and the City Council as part of a site improvement plan process, and those will be public meetings. So the discussion tonight is really primarily centered around the grant application. So with that, I will turn it over to Luke Cannon, who's calling in to share a little bit more about the project, the funding, and the timing.
Thanks, Kelly. And Luke, are you available? Do we hear you?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Wonderful, Luke. Well, we're going to turn it right over to you. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. I appreciate you inviting me in tonight. As Kelly mentioned, this project is the Ridgegate Affordable Housing Project, located directly east of the Ridgegate Station light rail station. And Kelly, I apologize. Is the presentation available to be brought up? Thank you. This cover sheet will show you the rendering of our proposed 5-story structure. One level of underground parking with 4 levels of living units above. The project will consist of 67 total units, and as I mentioned, is directly east of the RTD station. If we can forward one slide. As noted here, this is the overall plan showing the city center. I've highlighted in blue the location of our affordable project. As I mentioned earlier, it's a 5-story building. We will be achieving Enterprise Green Community standards. So this is a requirement per CHFA, and we will accomplish this through multiple ways in constructing this project. And a key point I would like to add is that in addition to being located next to RTD's light rail station, we are providing a NACO pass for all 67 units in the project, which we are committing to provide for 5 years for residents at the project, and hopefully be able to extend that beyond the 5 years. Next slide, please. This is a quick breakout of the unit mix in the project. We will have 39 1-bedrooms, 18 2-bedrooms, and 10 3-bedroom units. We have a weighted average mix from 30% AMI to 80% AMI, with a weighted average of 56.7. And basically, this is what this means is that in a 60% unit, a 1-bedroom unit will rent currently at $1,125. So at 30%, that actually falls to $675 for a 2-bedroom and $562 for a 1. So really excited to be able to provide the affordability here, and this provides just a quick breakdown of what residents will be able to expected to find here at this project. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we are achieving Enterprise Green Community standards here. This will be accomplished through LED lighting throughout the project, low flow water fixtures, Energy Star qualified windows and doors, Energy Star appliances. We will provide full kitchens. These will live and feel exactly like a market rate apartment community. And we will also provide, obviously, a community area for the residents. We've got 2 example photos of a recent project we just finished, showing the expected finishes and the community space that one can expect from this project. And as I mentioned, very excited to be able to provide the RTD passes, 1 per unit for the first 5 years that we hope to extend. In addition to that, we will have indoor bike storage and a playground and a picnic area, because we have a higher level of 2- and 3-bedroom units in this project, really hoping to help provide spaces for families and provide a nice place for residents to live and have the availability of the transportation directly next door. Next slide, please. So this is a quick breakdown of the sources and uses for the project. For those of you that saw this during the September 15th meeting, this is the exact same slide. we've identified the home funds that Kelly mentioned when she introduced me. Right now, we have $615,000 that we were anticipating to receive from the state for this project. It was included in our original application to CHAFA that was submitted at the end of January. Fast forward, obviously, a couple of months, and we were dealt a little bit of a curveball with the reallocation of those funds, and that's the reason we have come to City Council tonight, excuse me, and are making this public presentation tonight. Next slide, please. This is a brief description of the home funds that we are pursuing. This basically provides the ability to, these funds are available to be able to provide affordable housing for either purchase or rent. In this case, these will all be 67 for rent apartments. Next slide, please. So as Kelly mentioned, we had originally reached out to the Department of Local Affairs once we were awarded tax credits on this deal, only to be informed that legislative budget changes reallocated those funds due to COVID. As a result, they did inform us that the CDBG funds would be available, but due to those rules and regulations, they cannot be directly granted to a project. They have to be directly granted to a local government entity and then contributed to that project. As a result, that is the reason for the request of the partnership with Lone Tree and the point of this public presentation this evening. Next slide, please. Here's our anticipated time frame for the completion of the project. Upon completion of this public meeting, we will be submitting an application to DOLA. We are anticipating approval from the State Housing Board in December, which we will then work forward to complete the closing on this agreement along with the other financing vehicles, and are anticipating construction starting on this project in April of 2021. At this point in time, we are expecting a 14-month time frame during construction, and hopefully delivering these units in June of 2022. Next slide, please. And that basically wraps it up. As Kelly mentioned, we will be coming back forward with our site improvement plan. We have progressed through the design review committee here at Ridgegate, and have been given the go-ahead to submit on the site improvement plan. So council can expect to see that here very shortly. And with that, I'd like to open it up to any comments or questions.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that. And I apologize for the echo. I don't know if you guys are hearing it, but I unfortunately am. So we are looking forward to reviewing the site improvement plan, but tonight we're here to talk about the city grant application on behalf of Coble to the Department of Local Affairs. So given that, I'm going to ask council if there are any questions for either Kelly or Luke. And I'm going to run through your names just quickly so it's harder with these virtual meetings. So Mayor Pro Tem Brunick, any questions, comments?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Shaw, questions?
No questions.
Councilmember Carpenter?
No questions for me.
Councilmember Anderson?
No questions here.
Well, and Luke, you answered all my questions. I think you answered all of council questions between the second presentation we've received on this. So now I want to open it up. This is a public hearing to see if there are any questions from the public. And we're going to pause briefly to allow time for folks to connect to us virtually. And again, I will remind anyone that wishes to provide public comment to go to the Ask a Question box on your screen and click on it and put your name, your address, and you can either type in your comment or you can request to be called by staff, and staff will connect you with us. So again, we're going to pause briefly to allow time for folks to connect virtually. And while they're doing that, Luke, I'm going to just share with you, I'm very interested in understanding how you might be able to extend those eco passes beyond 5 years. So looking forward to more details on that, and excited to, again, learn more details about the project during the site improvement plan. So again, I will ask our city clerk, has anyone requested to join us either by phone or submitted a public comment in the Ask a Question box?
Mayor Millet, I don't see any requests for public comment.
Okay, we're going to move forward in the process, but Jay, if somebody does tap something in, will you please interrupt feel free to interrupt if a public comment does come in as we move forward in our process.
Great, thank you.
Even though I am going to be closing our hearing, I will reopen it if we get one, okay? So I'm officially going to close our public hearing, and I will look for a motion from City Council.
I move to authorize the city manager to submit an application to the State of Colorado Department of Local Affairs for the Ridgegate Station Affordable Apartments on behalf of Coble and Company.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Luke, we look forward to seeing you with an SIP.
We do as well. Thank you very much for the support, and we really appreciate to move this project forward. Thank you so much.
Great. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Next on our agenda is speaking of apartments, Ridgegate Station Apartments SIP project SP 20-24. Jennifer Drybread from the city staff is going to lead this off. So Jennifer, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's good to see you all again. Next slide. Happy to bring this application before you tonight. It's a request for approval of a site improvement plan for a mixed-use residential community on a little over 8 acres, including 6 4- and 5-story apartment buildings, a total of 540 apartment units, which also includes 2 parking structures, an outdoor gathering space, 4 commercial lease spaces, and a grab-and-go cafe. Next slide, please. The property is located kind of at the central portion of the photograph, and it shows its location northeast of the RTD light rail station garage, south of Ridgegate Parkway, west of South Havana Street, and east of I-25. Next slide, please. This is a photograph that was taken from South Havana Street looking southwest. You can see the RTD garage in the background, and you can see very clearly how the land slopes from west to east down toward the Happy Canyon Creek corridor, and the applicant will talk more about grade in their presentation. Next slide, please. The property is located within the Ridgegate PDD 6th Amendment. It's located within that amendment in that district in the city center and in the mixed use 3 zone. Next slide, please. It's important to sort of look at this project in context, this apartment application in context in the city, and to also note that apartments in Lone Tree comprise at present 8% of the total land area of residential development in the city. Owner-occupied housing comprises 92%. So plans for a higher density multifamily in transit-oriented developments like this one are important because they support ridership and investment in light rail, and certainly Lone Tree has made a huge investment in that way. They promote walkability, they reduce dependence on cars, which also helps to minimize traffic congestion and air quality impacts. And it's important to note the plans are for diversity of housing types in Ridgegate, and the Southwest Village, which will be coming before the council at some point in the future, will be comprised largely of for sale detached and attached homes. Next slide, please. So within the city center and the sub-area plan for the city center, this mixed-use 3 district is envisioned as a compact mixed-use pedestrian and transit-oriented development. It does support residential, office, and commercial development in that district. The urban trail connects to the rest of the city center and future regional park. 3- to 5-story buildings are supported here, as are buildings being brought up to the street. It's a very urban environment. Next slide, please. In terms of access, you can see that at the very top of the graphic here, the site plan, it shows High Note Avenue, which is now the name of the new east-west collector, located at the top of the screen, extending to the left and then south along Rail Drive, and then further south connecting to Railway, which connects you back to South Havana Street. There's also a private access drive that's in the center of the graphic here, which is a private drive or street, and the applicant will touch on that more. In terms of the building, again, located at or near the property line, the application does comply with the requirements for parking. Snow storage is also being addressed in this plan in various locations. It's also important to note that there will be carports on top, or canopies on top of the or over the cars in those parking fields, so snow storage won't be as much as might be in a surface parking lot. But interestingly, and you may have noticed in the staff report, the applicant has actually done calculations to try to determine snow storage needs, and that's first time that we've seen that, and we'll be looking at that and sort of tracking that and possibly applying those kind of calculations to future development. Next slide, please. In terms of architecture and facade articulation, which is required and certainly strongly encouraged in the city's design guidelines and the sub-area plan. This is accomplished through alternating materials and colors, things like balconies, treatment at corners, landscape insets on the side. And also in terms of building materials, they're utilizing preferred or secondary materials according to the sub-area plan. They have provided for screened parking, again, internal to the site, and they have accounted for screening of rooftop mechanical. Next slide, please. In terms of landscaping, and the applicant will get into a little more detail on this, but they do, the landscaping is in line with xeriscape principles. There's been a lot of attention made to the streetscape and a whole program for a detailed plan for pet waste, and in terms of plant materials, wash down stations, and so on. And it's really quite a project and proposal that they've come up with that. And again, we'll be looking at that to see how successful that might be for applying elsewhere in the city center. The use of porous pavers and structured soil in strategic areas, the use of plant materials that provide year-round interests with evergreen shrubs, trees, and grasses, and the interior landscape focal point in this project is really this interior courtyard. Next slide, please. In terms of this property's location near Centennial Airport, they are subject to a recorded abrogation notice for the property. There is a notice on the site improvement plan, as there was on the plat, and they are subject to Part 77 through FAA, and they went through that process, and the FAA ruled that there are no hazard. They're not even required to light the tops of the buildings at this location. Next slide, please. In terms of sustainability practices, the large one really is its adjacency to light rail, and its adjacent access to sidewalks and trails. And that's one thing that a TOD really does afford, is this opportunity for sustainability. They also offer rideshare programs, recycling chutes in the buildings, Energy Star appliances, and through their xeriscape landscaping practices. Next slide, please. This project was sent on referral, as is standard practice. All referral comments have been addressed or will be addressed by the applicant. Next slide, please. Planning Commission did hear this application. They unanimously recommended approval of the SIP in September 22nd, subject to final approval by the City Public Works Department for technical and code requirements. Next slide, please. Staff finds the application is in conformance with the Lone Tree Comprehensive Plan, the Ridgegate PDD 6th Amendment, the City Center Sub-Area Plan, Article 17 of the Zoning Code, and the Lone Tree Design Guidelines. Next slide, please. And this is our suggested motion, which will also be found at the end of the applicant's presentation. So with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Keith Simon, who is the Director of Development for Coventry Development Corporation, who will provide some brief comments and then introduce the applicant. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer, and welcome Keith.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. And Jennifer, thank you for that introduction and the usual great and thorough staff report. We're really pleased to be here tonight with this first private development project on the east side. You all have previously approved a couple of public infrastructure site improvement plans, and then also the Tall Tales Ranch site improvement plan, but this is the very first private development project, so always an exciting milestone. This map that you're looking at right now, as a reminder, shows the 3 initial development areas for the east side. You've seen this before. To the far right is the Couplet District area, which will be anchored by a grocery store and retail center, but will also include quite a bit of other mixed-use development, and we're hoping to bring that SIP to you in the early part of next year. And then in the center area is, of course, the Southwest Residential Village, which is now in a referral process and coming to Planning Commission and City Council soon with its preliminary plan for 1,900 for sale homes. And by the way, just to clarify on what Jennifer said previously, all of the homes in the Southwest Village will be for sale homes. There won't be any rental there. And then lastly, to the far left is the area that we're going to be talking about tonight, which is the Ridgegate Station TOD, or Transit Oriented Development area, about 30 acres. We're expecting it to include around 700 higher density residential units and a mix of commercial uses. Could be office, could be hotel, could be some other retail there. If you could go to the next slide, please. The rendering here, and you've also seen this before too, gives a 3-dimensional idea of what that TOD area might look like in the future. And the idea is that it would be somewhat similar to what has come to fruition at the Skyridge Station, a mix of different uses there at the rail station. The other reason I'm here tonight is to tell you that this project has gone through the full Ridgegate Design Review Committee process with a number of changes and improvements made along the way. I think you all see those minutes from the meeting, and we really thank Regency Residential for working with the Design Review Committee on these changes. And obviously the Design Review Committee has approved the project. We like it quite a bit. We're very pleased that this project has had such thoughtful design on so many different elements. You'll hear about some of that tonight. And we are also very thankful that the project has agreed to embed a couple of locations of retail space, one in each phase. It's a 2-phased project. So we'll end up with some needed early retail on the east side through this project, both at the rail station and also along Havana Street. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim Francescan from Regency Residential to introduce the project to you and his team.
Thank you very much, Keith, and welcome to Mr. Francescan, if hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And I guess you need to *6 to unmute yourself, and we are ready to listen.
You pronounced it perfectly. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. All
right, great. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. We're very excited to be here this evening. And thank you to Keith and Jennifer for the introductions and overview. If we could please transition to the next slide. And one more slide, please. Thank you very much. So with me in the room today, I'm Jim Francescan, and I'm joined with Chris Winchester, Vice President of Development, and Kerry Redmond, Development Analyst with Regency. We're a local-based developer office just down the street in the DTC. We've done a number of projects in Ridgegate historically, totaling over $500 million in overall value and over 1,000 units. A few of our prior projects are listed on the right-hand side of the page. On some of our apartment projects, we continue to own them, and that, obviously creates alignment with the city and with Lone Tree's current and long-term vision. Transitioning to the next slide, please. I'd like to quickly present the project team on the line with us today. From an architectural, civil engineering, and structural engineering side, we have EV Studio. Dean Dalvin will be walking you through some of the design items in a moment from EV. We have Julie Hendrickson on the line from Consilium Design, who will give you a brief overview of our landscape architecture. And other consultants that aren't on the line that we're planning to use are Studio 10 from an interior design standpoint. We're actively using them on another project on the west side of I-25 right now, as well as Echelon Property Group for the management company who actively manage our existing projects, Ovation and Regency Ridgegate. And we also have Cassie Slade from Foxtel Transportation on the phone today. If we could please move to the next slide. Thank you. So to give you a quick overview of the project, Ridgegate Station is an 8.2 acre TOD site located adjacent to the Ridgegate Station light rail stop. The project will be comprised of 540 units split between 2 phases. And as you can see on the rendering to the left, there's a private drive that bisects the 2 phases. How we have it contemplated is for phase 1 to be the eastern half and phase 2 to be the western half. Each phase will be comprised of 270 units, totaling together 540 units. As Keith mentioned, the project will also have 10,000 square feet of retail spread throughout the site. One of the unique aspects to the site is the 60-foot grade drop from the southwest corner to the northeast corner of the site. We designed the site plan around this grade drop, and as such, the buildings will be 4 or 5 stories depending on their location. But cohesively, it creates an overall, well thought out image and site plan. From a unit standpoint, we've designed 65% 1-bedrooms, totaling 351 units, and the balance of the units are 2-bedroom units or 189 units, with an average square footage across all units of 812 square feet. And one other exciting thing we're able to program here is that all units will have balconies so that residents can enjoy some form of outdoor space. Lastly, the project will boast an impressive amenity package, both indoors and outdoors. We really designed this with a community mindset, which can be seen with the private drive. We're really viewing this as the heart of the community. We hope to see farmers markets here and residents and also broader community events throughout these streets over time. If we could please transition to the next slide. So just to quickly recap some of the goals and visions we had when we kicked off this project, there were really 4 items we wanted to accomplish. One was to be the first market rate development east of I-25, serving as a catalyst for the future Lone Tree City Center. The second was to offer residents with a new apartment concept. And as you'll see through the video here in just a moment, it's a very open site plan, allowing folks to interact in between the buildings with a big great lawn, great pool, rooftop decks. It's a very open filling site plan for the area. Our third initiative was to allocate 10,000 square feet of retail to help jumpstart the east side. We think this is going to be fantastic, not only for residents, but for the community at large, and particularly light rail patrons. And then lastly, more than all, we set out to design a project that fits well within Ridgegate today, but has the depth to fit into a more urban setting that we envision the east side ultimately becoming. And we hope that that's clear when you look at the architecture slides here in just a minute. So with that brief introduction, we'd like to introduce you to Ridgegate Station with a brief video. Dean from EV is going to narrate it. I'm hoping it doesn't lag too much. If it does, we may just go silent, but we'll give it our shot. Next slide, please.
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is Dean Dalvin with EV Studio, and if presuming the slide is, or the video is moving forward now.
Not quite. Oh yeah, there it goes. Sorry, there it goes. It wasn't there quite yet. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. So you guys are probably seeing a little bit of a bit of a lagged version, but that's okay. You're getting a lot of the imagery that we've come up with. Starting in the northeast corner, we have the primary entrance to the leasing office on the right, and on the left-hand side, our commercial space that is served by surface parking. And as the video winds itself around this lower area, you start to get a sense of this grade climb from the northeast to the southwest. That is 60 feet. What we're looking at through the center of the village here is really a private central drive that is primarily for circulation. The center zone is for ride share, drop off, and things of that nature. And this is really the hub of the entire campus. This is where all of our amenities are, our outdoor pool, our outdoor gardens. And this street is also private street or privatized so that we can close it off portions of for farmers markets and things of that nature. Looking straight down, sort of bird's eye view from the air, you can see how the amenity spaces tie into that central street area and are really the core center of the entire campus. Moving further southwest, we pass through the garden area and start to traverse up through our upper buildings and our upper parking structure. This is an example of sort of an alleyway between a parking structure and a building, heavily landscaped, very livable, very great sense of space to be. And also eyes are on this space, so we're not creating cavernous areas that could invite crime or any of that kind of thing, because all the balconies are overlooking all of these wonderfully landscaped outdoor spaces. Finally, as we enter the uppermost southwest edge, the parking station will come into view, as well as the light rail station. We see the outdoor patio for the coffee shop that would anchor the southwestmost building, and that creates our outdoor space. So I just want to talk a little bit about the architecture and design context, if we could advance the slide. And what, as Jim had mentioned, the east side of I-25 really gives us an opportunity to really develop what the comp plan impacts so greatly, which is more of an urban context, more of a modern and denser environment than the east side. And so, as you can see on this slide with the design context, our project that we designed several years ago on the west side of I-25, the Ovation project, is more of a suburban feel, which is very much in context with all of the development in all around the Ridgegate area, Commonwealth Street, and so on and so forth. And that ties into Skyridge Medical Center and so on and so forth. As you look at the bottom of this zone of these slides, you can see our project, Ridgegate Station, a much more modern urban context. And to the right, the rendering for the Kiewit headquarters, which again is also a very urban context, something you expect to see in a city center, which is what the comp plan is all about. Next slide, please. So the site plan that Jim had sort of started to discuss, and really realizing that in 2D it's difficult to tell the 60 feet of grade drop from the southwest to the northeast. But what we're really doing with this is we're breaking up this site with individual buildings and the two parking structures, and each of these buildings literally stair-step the site from high to low. So we're not creating any large cuts and fills with big retaining walls that are necessary. In fact, we're picking up most of that grade with our buildings, which is really great, effective way to make the site very livable and make the campus feel very unified. There's a number of things I want to point out in the site plan. The east phase and the west phase are really the two sort of halves, split by the private drive that runs down the center. Around the edges are the existing drive on the south that accesses the parking garage and the bus transfer station and the train station. On the west and north will be new public roads that will be constructed. And then, of course, on the east is Havana Street. So the primary entrance to the project will be off the northeast, off Havana. And then this private drive, as I discussed, which really enters the core area of the amenity space. The green zones are the rideshare loading zones. And then blue zones that you see in the image here are individual building loading zones. So we've ensured that every building has a minimum of one loading zone that services for move in and move out and deliveries and things of that nature. Also not shown on this particular site plan overview because it's just a lot of information to capture, but every building is equipped with trash chutes and private trash rooms, and those trash drop-off zones are all occurring off of the main drives as per the design guidelines. So we've addressed all of that. So we're really handling all of that, and then to be discussed a little bit as well, sort of the forward-thinking snow storage that we've put into the context, as well as I'll let all the landscaping and the dog amenities come later in the conversation. If we could advance to the next slide. So Jim had talked about some of the project amenities. We really are looking at this project as an outstanding opportunity to really have state-of-the-art, world-class amenity package for the residents. And you saw in the video some of the outdoor amenities. We also, what you couldn't see in the video are rooftop lounges that we're designing into 2 of the buildings as well. And so on the far right-hand side of this slide, you can see some imagery of what we have in mind for how those rooftop lounges will appear. The other amenities, really fitness center, co-working library, which is certainly has always been in high demand and even more so now in the age of COVID. We really want to encourage ride sharing. This is a TOD site, so in addition to bus and train, we see strong Uber and Lyft opportunity here, and we're dedicating space right there in the center of the entire campus for that. And also, this is Colorado, so we want to make sure that the residents all have an opportunity to store their toys in a way that isn't going to muck up balconies and decks and common areas, but dedicated spaces for bike repair and storage and ski storage and those sorts of things. Next slide, please. So for the exterior renderings, the video really told most of that story, but what you also saw in that video is how every one of these buildings is very highly visible from virtually every side. This is not like an alley loaded corridor type of project where there's a very clear front and a back side that all the architecture falls off. Our approach on this project is to treat every side of every building as if it could be the front, because people will be coming in from any side of these buildings, depending on if they're coming in from many areas or from the street side or from the TOD area. And so we really wanted to make sure that there was no backside of any of these buildings. And instead of concentrating too much emphasis on one facade, we really spread the materiality and the color palette and the experience all around all 4 sides. Now, while doing that, we still wanted some really powerful movements that we anchored on the elements. So what you can see, so the upper left-hand corner image and the lower right-hand corner image are those elements. And those are the powerful moves that we're doing in the really highly public spaces where we have amenities and where we're engaged outdoor spaces as well. Next slide, please. And what we have here is really the material palette. And again, we're spreading these materials around all 4 sides of the buildings. And what you see in these materials is, again, a little bit more modern, edgier feel in the materiality, but also very sophisticated look for this urban paradigm that we're really going for. The colors are muted, but identifiable so that each building has its own identity, but also every building feels unified across the entire campus. There will be plenty of vantage points from both above and below where you can actually see portions of virtually every building because of the nature of this grade drop. The buildings really emerge them as they fall across the site. And so we want to make sure that all of the buildings are unified across the site. And you saw that a little bit in the video, and you can see that in some of the overall renderings as well. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to the discussion of the landscape side of things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Great. I'm excited to share with you the landscape overview for Ridgegate Station. I can't see the slides. Do I have the landscape overview slide up?
Yes, you do.
Great. As Jennifer introduced, we have worked on year-round interest through ornamental grasses, evergreens, and seasonal color, including annual planters at entrances and key street corners. The landscape is water efficient and resilient. Most of our plant selections are xeric, and the only spray irrigation is at the Great Lawn area. Our planting plan has also been designed to accommodate pets and snow storage, which I'll go into more later. Visual continuity on the site was one of our goals and has been achieved by focal points, a consistent plant palette, common trellis and pergola details, along with specialty hardscape at our amenity areas. The amenity areas include a unique circulation corridors and spaces between the buildings and garages. We design these in a way that they offer different experiences, ranging from urban and active, as shown in image number 3, to relaxed and contemplative, as shown on number 4. Screening and buffering, when appropriate, has been planned for the parking garages, including cutouts in the hardscape to facilitate vining plants on the garage facades when they are exposed. Next slide, please. One of the key landscape goals for this project was to create a dog-friendly environment. We have all seen the issues created by pets and multifamily developments. So we really wanted to take a look at this and make sure that we were planning appropriately. Part of our planning was to create a hierarchy streetscape system based on the location of building exits and project entrances. All areas have salt-tolerant plants with a consistent colorful palette and winter interest. Next slide, please. First, shown in blue, the project entrances are raised planters. These elevate and protect the plants in these high visibility areas. There is a trench drain specified adjacent to the planter on the sidewalk side to facilitate cleaning of the planter and sidewalk, reducing any urine smell that might linger. Next, shown in green, we have crusher fine permeable paver planters. These areas have a 1-foot 4-inch crusher fine border at the sidewalk edge for dogs to squat and eliminate. This area is easy to clean up and an inexpensive material to replace if needed. Planter fencing is used to deter pets from entering the interior planting areas. Finally, we have the dog-friendly mulch planters shown in yellow. These areas are planted exclusively in blue lime grass, which is an aggressive spreader, salt tolerant, can tolerate foot traffic, and has a beautiful blue-green color, making it a very regenerative plant in an area where dogs could enter the planter. Next slide, please. Additional detailed information has been provided in your packet as shown. This innovative approach to provide years of enjoyment for this unique project. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Dean and Julie, appreciate it. If we could please move to the next slide. Great. So in summary, just a quick update on timing. So we're shooting to start construction next year with delivery of phase 1 in 2023. Phase 2 will be shortly behind that, with construction anticipated to start in 2022 and delivery in 2024. With that, if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much for the time this evening. We enjoyed being able to share the presentation with you, and we hope you're as excited about the project as we are. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so very much. Okay, I will look to council now to ask a couple questions. And given the virtual meeting, we're going to just go through in order. I will start with our Mayor Pro Tem, Kathy Brunick. Kathy, any thoughts, comments, questions for either our staff or Mr. Francesca and his team, or actually Keith Simon?
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, so thanks to everyone. Really great presentation. We always love seeing kind of the newest innovations that are coming around. It's funny how pets and snow and parking tend to always be at the top of the list. So we really appreciate y'all covering that off in detail. I share Keith's excitement about the first commercial development being ready to go and private development in this way, and really appreciate the attention to getting us some retail in that region just based on where it's going to be, and because it's early, we think that's going to make a huge difference in the viability for those residents in that space. So I'm pretty excited about it and love what I'm seeing today. I don't have any specific questions. The packet was quite large, and I'm still kind of sorting through some of those details, but from what I've seen tonight, I don't think I have any further questions.
Okay, Kath, feel free to jump back in if something sparks your interest if another council member raises it. All right, moving on. Okay, moving on to Council Member Shaw. Wynn, what are you thinking?
Thank you. Again, lovely presentation, and I think this is going to be a wonderful space. I love the idea of that central private street that connects the green space and the pool between the buildings. It just looks really clean, and I love the soft color choices. I think that helps it blend very nicely with the landscape, and certainly appreciate the thoughtfulness around the pet spaces. That is wonderful, and I think that helps keep the property looking nice if there are appropriate areas for pets, because everyone loves their pets. So thank you, and I didn't have any questions either.
Okay, Wynn, thanks. So I'm just going to let you know I do have some questions. So don't get too comfortable.
Okay.
But I'm going to go last. So I'm going to turn to Councilmember Carpenter. Jay, anything?
Yes, so I realize you will have some questions, so I'll yield that to you, but I want to make some comments. So I'd like to acknowledge the Ridgegate Design Review Committee and the Lone Tree Planning Commission. All of their efforts and the well-documented minutes kind of help us through this whole process. So I really like the project a lot. I like the architecture. I like the feel, the layout. I really like that private drive and the potential that it presents in the future. And I really like the retail piece too. And I think it's really going to finally activate the TOD area that we've been waiting for and anxious about. So really well thought out. I like it a lot. I wish I could move in there.
Hey, your wife may let you. Just watch out, Jay. Be careful what you.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Anderson, do you have anything?
No questions to ask, but would reinforce some of the prior comments. What a delightful design of the innovation that was put into this to help with the pedestrian friendly and the bimodal transportation and how we move people from the rail site into residential and ultimately into the city center. The things that are been activated to help in terms of walking, biking, ease of pickup by share ride companies, and what a delightful site this will be. And thanks for all the hard work and the innovation and putting it together. And a shout out to our planning commission, the review commission, and our staff for all the feedback was offered along the way, and for the adjustments that were made to make sure we come up with a design that was satisfactory to everybody.
Okay, leave it to the mayor to ask all the hard questions. No, I don't have hard questions. I just have a couple of follow-up things. So I'm reading the minutes from the planning commission. They asked about EV charging stations, and I just want to confirm that, it says that they are wired, and are you going to be putting in facilities for folks who have electric vehicles to be able to charge in the garages? And is that part of the project, or is that a potential afterthought of the project?
Yes, we will have them wired and we will have them installed.
You will have them installed when the building opens. Do you know how many you're going to be planning to install?
I think we would start out with a handful of charging stations. Our partners on the charging side, ChargePoint, really have a lot of good data and tables and usage metrics, and we're going to be kind of following those to make sure that we have adequate charging stations and adequate charging stations in the future. So we're really going to look to that on the demand side of things, but it'll most likely start out with 3 or 4 and then potentially grow in the future as the need arises.
But we'll make sure that that's all wired up front, and we'll work with our consultant partner on that to make sure everything's in place so that as demand does increase over time, we can implement and install those stations.
You have the opportunity to expand them. The city is just starting within the last 2 years to be, we actually have some publicly accessible charging stations. I think it is going to become an increasingly important part of our infrastructure, particularly as we look to some of the state's goals regarding climate and electrification of fleet. So I guess I would like to understand a commitment when the first building opens of the number of charging stations, and I'm not going to dictate it to you. I just would like you to communicate to staff how many you anticipate having open when you lease that first building.
Absolutely.
I would like to know that. The other question I had is, so beautiful, beautiful amenity spaces. Some of those amenity spaces do lend themselves to people congregating and being together, the co-working space and the yoga room potentially, and the gym and do you anticipate having those windows be able to open, so open circulation in those those public indoor spaces where people will be convening?
In sort of the spaces, absolutely. So the clubhouse adjacent to the pool, that will be a slider, so you can have great airways there. We'll also have large entry doors that can be propped open for co-working and whatnot. We don't have windows planned right now that would open up, just how we've designed the building with that 2-level glass. Mm-hmm. But, you know, one other thing we're actually looking at for the interior here, and this is something that's just early in concept, but given COVID, you know, we're hyper focused on airflow. So we're looking at potential filtration systems that utilize UV light to better air circulate throughout the buildings. Again, that's a more early concept but, you know, if it's something we can put into it, that would be great for a building like this.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to learn that as well as we look at new buildings and the lessons we can learn from COVID moving forward. And I think that is a very important one. Again, I'm not going to require any, not going to put any requirement on you to do any of that. I do see that's where the market is going, and curious if that was the same. One of the other questions I have, not directly, but I'm going to pick your brain since I have you here, is you have done a lot of building in Lone Tree, and I'm curious if you have lessons learned and if this project evolved or changes were made to this project because of lessons you've learned from Lone Tree.
Absolutely. I think, you know, frankly, it's the pet one was huge. You know, just from an aesthetic standpoint and a maintenance standpoint, to change out the sod, you know, we take a lot of pride in the buildings and want them to always look their best. And, you know, a lot of Lone Tree residents love their pets. I don't blame them, you know, but that's really was a huge lesson learned and something that we really tried to be innovative on this project. And we'll certainly keep a close dialogue with staff, you know, over, you know, once we're through development and how that's all working out, because I think it could be really great for future projects. And, you know, if it works well, it's certainly something that we're going to continue to push going forward. Something else that we spent time on is snow storage. You know, that always comes up. We actually took a real numerical approach to it and tried to really hone in on that and figure out the best way to lay out the site. We think that's an innovative way to handle it going forward. And, you know, when we come to you on future projects, we certainly plan to include those metrics, and we'll continue to work with staff on that as well. And then, as is always important with apartment buildings, you have a lot of people going in and out of them. Access is key. This is a really great site given how spacious it is. I think the EV Studios team has done a fantastic job and really incorporating a lot of feedback from staff. They spend a lot of time with us on how we can really hone in the access and make it efficient for move-ins and move-outs, trash pickup, ride sharing, people that, you know, are utilizing the commercial, being so are we still on? Our system just kicked off.
Yeah, you're on for
sorry.
us. We hear you. I hear you. Yep.
Okay, sorry, our video just went dark, but if you can still hear me.
Yes,
those are probably the three biggest items that we had lessons learned from. And then, you know, there's some minor things from designs on the inside and whatnot, like balconies on 100% of the units. I think that's just huge, and people certainly enjoy it.
That's great. My final question is that have you explored any kind of a neighborhood eco-pass program for Ridgegate Station, given the proximity to light rail and the fact that your parking is somewhat reliant on people taking advantage of access to light rail, and RTD has been very, well, I'm not going to give them too much credit, but RTD has identified some programs for apartments Have you as a developer or builder of apartments looked into that, and are you looking at encouraging folks that choose to purchase in Ridgegate Station? Are you going to make it easy for them? Are you going to do anything with the EcoPass program?
I had a feeling you were going to ask that question. It came up during the referral period. It's something we're looking into right now. To give you a firm direction one way or another, we can certainly follow up. We're working through it and just looking at what the overall impact would be and looking at the demand and all those factors. But it's right on light rail. To your point, you know, from a high level, I think it checks a number of the boxes. But to just be frank with you, we just need to dig a little bit deeper into it, but I think it sets up well for the program. We just need to better understand the specifics before we fully commit to it.
Okay, and again, I'm not going to require it, but I wouldn't make it a condition of approval. But I do think I would like you to follow up with the Lone Tree staff and communicate to council what you're doing as far as EV charging stations, what you're going to have on day one, and what the capacity is. And then I would like to understand where you come down on the neighborhood EcoPass or apartment EcoPass program, because I do think one of the important things of the TOD site is actually encouraging that, you know, making it as easy as you can for folks. And I think there's a great opportunity for value when you go in with a neighborhood or an apartment pass program. So those were my comments. Thanks for indulging me with the lessons learned, because I always want to continue to make sure we're serving our community and you hear the complaints as much as we may hear the complaints. So we'll always want to take the opportunity to do better. So that was it for me. I think based on the comments from my council, we can look to entertain a motion. And if Jennifer, you want to put that back up, there it is. Wonderful. I will look for a motion from council.
I move to approve Site Improvement Plan SP 20-24R, subject to final approval by the City Public Works Department for technical and code requirements.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Again, we look forward to welcoming this development into the community, and we thank you for your continued investment in the city of Lone Tree, and looking forward to hearing about that. EcoPass and the electric charging station. So thank you all for being with us this evening. It was a very good presentation.
Thank you so much, and we will be certain to follow up on those points. Have a great evening, and thank you.
All right, you as well. You as well. Thanks. All right, guys, moving on to administrative matters. Ordinance 20-08, an ordinance amending section 2-70 of the Lone Tree Municipal Code concerning commercial solicitations. This is first reading, and our city attorney, Linda Michaud, will be guiding us through this. Linda.
Hi, Mayor, City Council. I am pleased to present Ordinance 20-08 to you on first reading. Next slide, please. I'd like to start out by highlighting, as you all know, what the city's current regulations are relating to door-to-door solicitations. Those include requiring that solicitors, that would be commercial peddlers, hawkers, or solicitors, be required to register with the city. And that registration also requires them to carry their registration card on their person when they do go door to door. There is also a no visitation or no solicitation list that's maintained by the city that residents can sign up for. And I'd like J. Rob just to step in real quickly and explain that process and how many residents are currently registered for that.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Just real quick, Mayor and Council, residents can sign up for the no knock list here at the city building. And a recent development is we've also received those requests through the community contact fillable form that's on our website. And so we've given residents 2 ways to fill out the no knock request. And once they do that, they receive the little silver stickers you've probably seen around the community to highlight to solicitors that they've requested no knocks at their residence. And then when the solicitors fill out the application, they receive the list of resident addresses only. And we give them a warning to please do not knock on any of the addresses listed on the list, and of course to watch out for the silver stickers. And like Linda said, there are approximately 900 residents signed up for the no-knock list.
Thanks, Jay. With that registration and the no-knock list, obviously there's a prohibition against entering private property that's posted with any signs, including that sticker, which I'm going to show you on the next slide, or any other kind of no trespassing sign. And so finally, the point of this presentation really is related to the last regulation there in the bullet, which is the hours of allowed commercial solicitation. And our code provision currently allows commercial solicitation only between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. or 30 minutes after sunset, whichever is later. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to show you the sticker that residents in the community are able to post at their front entryway. Next slide, please. So I think I touched on this. I did touch on this during the study session, the legal framework for commercial solicitation. And that's really because commercial speech is also protected under the First Amendment. And these three bullets really don't even touch the surface of the breadth and depth of First Amendment jurisprudence. But I did want to highlight just a couple of these points relative to commercial solicitation regulations. And so any ordinance restricting commercial speech must serve a substantial government interest. And the ordinance must demonstrate that the harms it recites or relies upon are real and justified and supported by quantifiable data. Next slide, please. So these legal principles were really put to the test in the Aptive Environmental v. Castle Rock case. And that's actually a picture of one of their friendly pest control agents from the Aptive Environmental website. And as I mentioned during the study session, Aptive Environmental sought a permit from Castle Rock to allow their salespeople to solicit business within Castle Rock. And Castle Rock has a very similar, if not identical, curfew or time restriction imposed as Lone Tree does. And lo and behold, within about a week of them starting their solicitation program in Castle Rock, they pulled out of Castle Rock and actually sued the city because they claimed that they were at a competitive disadvantage and that the regulation Castle Rock had imposed violated their First Amendment rights. Unfortunately, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in May of 2020 this year sided with Aptive Environmental, finding that the time restriction did in fact violate First Amendment principles because the court found that the time restriction advanced by the city of Castle Rock's interest in promoting public safety and citizen privacy they really didn't support that with any evidence or data that really commercial solicitations occurring after 7 p.m. created more crime or invaded someone's privacy. They had a lot of testimony during that case that related generally to complaints, but nothing really was tied to after 7 p.m. commercial solicitations. So based on that, the court struck down that provision in Castle Rock. Next slide, please. So because Lone Tree's time restriction is virtually identical to Castle Rock's, and when Lone Tree adopted that restriction, I could find really no evidence or data to support that time restriction. Our recommendation is to repeal that section of 6-2-70. And of course, I would like to emphasize that residents still retain the private right to exclude solicitors from their property through no solicitation signs, no trespassing signs, and also through the city's convenient no solicitation list. So If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I believe the next slide is a proposed motion.
Thanks, Linda. We'll go ahead and leave that motion up, and I will look to council for questions. Thank you for the presentation. I know that you already know council was very disappointed to hear the court's action on this. But let's start off with Jay. You haven't started yet tonight, so Councilmember Carpenter.
No questions for me, but it's something we have to do, and thanks for all your work on that, Linda.
Okay, Councilmember Anderson.
No specific questions. Thanks for investigating the court case and bringing us the recommendation.
Helping us not get sued. Okay, how about Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very disappointed that the ruling came out of the 10th Circuit, but understand that the better choice here is to eliminate that provision from our ordinance.
Okay, and Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
Yeah, no questions for me. Just I know when we saw this in study session, and this is probably for Seth and team, just to make sure that once we have repealed this, that there is some communication potentially in one of our publications that goes out to our residents, helping them understand the two options that Jay described that are available to them in order to, if they would like to stop that from happening at their home, what they can do. So thank you.
Will do.
Thanks, Kath, and that's exactly what I was going to say. So good, you got to hear it from the Mayor Pro Tem instead. I don't think there's any questions. I have any questions, so I will look for a motion from council.
I move to adopt an ordinance amending section 6-2-70 of the Lone Tree Municipal Code concerning commercial solicitations on first reading.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And again, Linda, disappointed, but understand and thank you for guiding us through the process. All right, last on our formal agenda is approval of the external audit services contract, and our Deputy City Manager, Kristen Baumgartner, is going to take us through this one. Kristen, we haven't heard from you this evening.
Hi, Mayor and Council. I'm really happy to be able to present this tonight. Unfortunately, Uli wasn't able to join us, but I will share this good news with Council on our external audit RFP process, and would like to start by saying that I'd like to send a huge thanks to our finance team who spent a lot of time working on this, and I think it has yielded great results. So next slide, please. So the RFP process for the external audit services is something that we typically do in about a 5-year period. That's best practices to really look at changing your external auditor every 5 to 7 years. So we did issue an RFP back in June and allowed about a month to receive questions from the firms that were interested in working with the city. And then the submittal deadline was at the end of July. Those submittals were then reviewed by the city staff and a member of the audit committee beginning in August. And then we did interviews with selected firms in mid-August and made a selection of the finalists at the end of August with audit committee recommendation. Next slide, please. So we were lucky this time to have 8 firms respond to our RFP. And of those 8 firms, we did ask 4 of them to come in for a virtual interview process. Some of the criteria in picking the firms to come in for those interviews included size and knowledge of the firms, what training programs they had, what government clients they did work with, and then also price was one of the considering factors. Next slide, please. The audit committee was highly involved in this process, and that is one of their main goals as a committee is to always help and oversee external auditor selection. And one of the committee members participated in the review of all the detailed RFPs. And then at the September 2nd audit committee meeting, there was discussion amongst the full committee. They discussed the qualification of the firms, and the audit committee did recommend to select Haney & Company as the city's new audit firm. Next slide, please. Haney & Company is a regional firm. Their offices are located in Littleton. They do have extensive experience with SCFD, single audits, and working with entities that file for the GFOA awards. They provide annual governmental accounting training and other training opportunities as well to their clients. We did look at different references and were able to confirm references with the City of Grand Junction, Brighton, and Fountain, and received very good feedback both from the finance director and the city manager at Grand Junction, and they're actually looking to extend their contract with them and have had them for their auditors for the last 5 years. Next slide, please. The cost of the contract in the initial year, which will be for the 2020 audit, which will occur starting this fall and into next spring, is $29,000 for the city's base financial statement audit, and then an additional $7,000 for all of the extra components for the SCFD audit, which allow us to apply for that grant opportunity. And then $4,500 if we need to do a single audit, which is related to if you receive federal funds, a single audit is required if you receive more than $750,000 in a given year. And we do anticipate we will need one of those next year due to the receipt of the CARES funding that we have got in 2020. And so with these components, the total cost for next year still come in right at what we budgeted for our audit this year. So we're really happy that even with the extra component of the single audit, these numbers still came in line with our budget, especially in such a hard budget year. We're very excited to get such a high quality firm at such a reasonable price. The contract is a 5-year contract that can be renewed on 1-year terms. And they did put in there that they have the opportunity to request an average increase of 3% per year, which is pretty standard in these contracts. And these contracts are usually 5 years just for both the amount of time it takes the auditor to get into the know of the city and to collect all the working papers, and also to have consistency with the staff over a period of time. Next slide, please. And so with that, I'm open to any questions, and then the motion slide will follow.
Thanks, Kristen. I know we were briefed on this during our study session, and I know Jay weighed in then, but I want to give, since Jay serves on the audit committee and was one of the recommending bodies for council on this issue, I want to ask Councilmember Carpenter if he has anything else he wants to add.
No, just as we said before, I appreciate it's always good to just go out and get a second opinion. And thanks to Uli for all of her work, as well as Peter Frenchman and the whole audit committee for their efforts on this initiative.
Okay, thanks. I will, and I'm going to turn it to other council members if they have any questions for Kristen or Jay regarding this contract. Okay, I didn't hear anybody, and so I think we're good. And then Kristen, then do you have the motion slide? And we'll look to Councilmember Carpenter to read that one for us.
I move to approve the contract with Haney & Company for external audit services and authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. And again, Kristen, please, Jay mentioned it, but thank Uli for her good work on this and a lot of other stuff. We've been keeping our finance director busy over the course of the last few months. So with that, our formal agenda is over with, and we are now turned to council comments. And as been somewhat of the practice during our virtual meetings, council has left them to me to make this evening. So first, I want to say a huge thank you to my partners on council. We had a lot this evening. We had a very, very full agenda. I appreciate your time and attention for all of this. I want to thank staff for their great work in guiding us through this process, keeping us on track, and keeping the city moving forward. I think it's important to note that in the midst of COVID response, we are still doing very good work in the city of Lone Tree. And I think it was an exciting evening in the sense of our first commercial property on the east side of I-25 coming before us. So I think that is the first of many that we will see, and the beginning of the building of the community and the vision that the residents of Lone Tree have had when the city annexed that property with a vote of the people. So in 1999. The other important things I want to note first is shop local. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's never been more important for us to patronize the brick and mortar shops that make up the vibrant community in the city of Lone Tree. So please continue to do that. I want to also encourage everybody to do their research, read their blue books, and make sure you vote in November. I think we're getting our ballots next week, and I think it's an important election, and they all are very important. I'm not going to tell you this is the most important one. What I'm going to tell you is they're all important, and we all need to vote. I also want to give another pitch out for people to take care of themselves during these times of COVID. We, unfortunately, on the City Council of Lone Tree have had 3 of our spouses had to visit Skyridge Hospital over the course of the last few months. Excuse me, of course of 2020, and none of the issues had anything to do with COVID. I think it's important for people to remember to maintain their public health, to get their regular checkups, to see their doctors if something doesn't feel right. Make sure you're not waiting, make sure you're going in and checking it. We just want to say a huge thanks to the tremendous partners in healthcare that have kept all of our spouses very healthy. And we want to know, particularly for our Mayor Pro Tem and her family, that she's been in our hearts and prayers over the course of the last few weeks, and very excited to hear good news on that front. So with that, my best wishes for all of you for a healthy and happy couple weeks, and we'll see you at the next council meeting. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, try and stay out of trouble.